Now we're measuring quadrats. So here is a quadrat along from 2 to 3 meters. This is a Mid-Atlantic transect NATN quadrat because I don't have the Mid-Atlantic quadrats. But breaking this up into kind of halves and quarters can kind of help you see what 50% looks like versus 25%. 1% is my fist, and so it's 10 by 10 centimeters. So going through this, first we start with quadrat data, which is basically stuff that's taking up space that plants can't grow. And so that's where like percent soil, rock, stem, wood, sphagnum, or non-sphagnum moss, lichens, and herbs come in. And so herbs are herbaceous species that are not on the indicator list for Mid-Atlantic. And in this quadrat, we actually don't have any herbaceous species that are on the indicator list. All we have are species not on the indicator list. So we have the Candida mayflower, Myanthemum canadense, and then Trientalis borealis, and a black-throated green warbler. And so putting the cover together of the herbaceous species, I see about 2 to 5. It's hard when they're sparse, but I say about 2 to 5%. Other stuff, so I don't see any soil. Soil would be exposed mineral soil, not organic soil. Rock, don't see any rock. Stem, this would count as stem, and then horizontal would be counting as wood. So there is some stem here, and so plants maybe won't be able to grow out of that as well, although, you know, things are growing out of it. And we don't double count. So if you have moss on wood, you don't count the wood, you count the moss. And so for stem, I get about 2 to 5%. There's a trace of wood. So here's some wood that's, it has to be over 5 centimeters diameter. So that's over 5 centimeters. That's just a trace. And then we don't have any sphagnum moss here, but we do have a fair amount of non-sphagnum moss. So there's some here, here, around in there. Kind of putting it together, I see about 5 to 10. And then looking at lichens, again, there's lichens up here, down here, a little bit less than the moss, so I would say like 2 to 5. All right, and that is it for quadrat data. So now we're going to go into quadrat species, and again, it's the indicator species or any woody species. And so we don't have any indicator herbaceous species in here. We do have red maple right here, and then a red spruce. And so percent cover of the red maple, you know, that's smaller than 1%. So that's going to be a trace for the red maple. And then the spruce, I'm going to put it at 2 to 5. It's taking up a good bit over there. And then that is it for quadrat species. Now we are going to go to quadrat seedlings. And so we want to measure the height class of the seedlings. Unfortunately, this red maple measuring to the top of the bud, hopefully you can see that, it is below 15 centimeters. So Acer rubrum is going to be 0 count and a trace for cover for seedlings. The Picea rubens, 30 centimeters, is right here. So the Picea rubens is 30 to a meter. It is not browsed. And that is it for the first quadrat. Quadrat 2. This is A5. And so, again, along the up transect, looking at this one, start with quadrat data. So we don't have any soil. We do have rock, so that's like 1%, 1 to 2% rock. It doesn't look like there's any stem. There is quite a bit of wood, so I would say there's about 5 to 10 of wood. There's no sphagnum. Moss, there's a few percent of moss. So I'm gonna go with 2 to 5. And then lichens, I think there's just a trace. Okay, so now herbaceous that are not on the indicator list. All of this Canada Mayflower is herbaceous. So I'm gonna give that a 2 to 5. And then now we go into quadrat quadrat species. Again, there aren't any herbaceous species on the indicator list, but we do have this Pinus strobus here. So that's gonna get added to the quadrat species list, 1 to 2. And then we're also going to have it be a quadrat seedling. So Pinus strobus, again, it's to the top of the bud. Here's the top of the bud. And it is over 15 centimeters, so it's a 15 to 30. I don't see any browse on this because I live in Maine. So no browse, and again, it's 1% cover. So that's the end of quadrat 2, or A5. This is our last quadrat on the A transect, or the up transect. And this is part of a trail on my property. So this is going to be trampled. This is the first trampled quadrat we've had. So if 10% or more of the quadrat has some form of trampling, then you call it trampled. If it's less than 10%, it's not called trampled. So it's trampled. There's a trace of rock. There's a trace of soil here because of the trampling. There's also, well, there's no wood, there's no stem. We do have some moss. So let's say 1 to 2 moss. So there's these guys, that. Lichens, also 1 to 2. Herbs, we got some Cornus canadensis coming in here, if you care. And then Canada Mayflower, but again, these are not indicator species, so they're just all part of percent herbs. So I think it's, put them together, it's still 1 to 2. And then quadrat species, the only woody species we have in here, because there are no indicator species, are we have this red maple, Ace rubrum, and then that's actually a Fagus grandifolia germinant over there. So Ace rubrum is a trace, Fagus is a trace. Going to quadrat species, or seedlings, they're all below 15 centimeters, so they're going to be no count and a trace. So that is it for quadrats on the A trace. So we are at the AA quadrat, so in the middle of every microplot there is a quadrat. And again, this is the wrong shape, but you get the idea. So we'll just sample this really quick. So first we have sampled, not trampled. It's just off from the trail. The trail's right there. So it's not trampled. There's no rock, no soil, no stem. Stems have to be 1 centimeter diameter. No wood that's big enough. There's no sphagnum, but there is quite a bit of moss. You can see over here there's quite a bit of moss, and there's a little bit more right there. So I actually think 25 to 50 for moss. And then lichens, it's a little bit over here, a little bit right here. I don't think it's enough to be 1%, so we're gonna say a trace. Okay, and then percent herbs that are not on the indicator list, which is everything in here. It's pretty much just the myanthemum. Down here, there's a little more myanthemum. Ooh, there's a little beech germinant right there. So percent herbs, we are gonna say 2 to 5. Okay, so now we have quadrat species. So quadrat species, we have a little red spruce right here, a little red spruce, and that might actually be all. So we're gonna say a trace for Picea rubens. And then going to quadrat seedlings, we just have no height for Picea rubens and trace cover. Alright, now we are going to sample a microplot.